We are recording the interview of Harry Donovan. This interview is being recorded by David Morse from Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Harry Donovan's house in Fairlawn, Ohio. It is 1:40 p.m., June 6th, 2017. All right, so let's start off with when and where you were born.
Born in Akron, Ohio, 1927.
Okay. And who were your parents?
Father was Beckham Donovan and Laura Donovan.
Okay. And what were their occupations?
Dad built tires at Goodrich, plus we farmed. We had a farm that we farmed.
Oh, yeah? What was it like growing up on a farm?
Well, I started working and raising vegetables and selling vegetables at the corner. I mean, sitting out in front of the house and so forth. So that's basically pretty much supported myself from the time I was maybe 8 or 9 years of age with my selling of sweet corn and so forth.
Yeah, that's good. Did you have any siblings?
I have two brothers. My older brother was Bill. He was 3 years in Guadalcanal. And then my younger brother, Dale, was in Army in Germany.
That's great. Were they any inspiration as far as you joining the military?
No, I don't think so. I just felt I was a junior in high school and I wanted to serve my nation. So I had to talk mom and dad in. When I was 16, I started begging them to let me join. So a couple of days after I was 17, they let me finally sign the papers, let me go.
Yeah, okay. Now, before you were 17 and joined, were you in school or were you just farming, a little bit of both?
Well, a little of both, yes. I mean, I worked on the farm, of course, and milked the cows and all that sort of thing.
Sure.
And got my first job at 11 years old in a grocery store. So I did that also. And you have to get my little need more, give more, and that'll show you and tell you more about it there, you know.
Okay.
You know.
So you're 17 years old and you joined the military. What branch was it that you decided
Navy.
to join? Navy. Okay. What made you decide to join the Navy?
Because I could swim. My buddy had lived next door to me, joined the Air Force, and he wanted me to join the Air Force with him. I said, no, I can't fly, but I can swim, so I'm joining the Navy.
Okay. So you join the Navy and you go to, is it basic training?
Basic training in
Okay.
Chicago there, yeah.
Chicago?
Yeah.
All right. Well, what was that like?
Well, it was 6 weeks of rigorous training, but the war was really on fire at that moment, so they went straight to California to Hawaii and got a ship out of the ship. So by the time I was in the Navy for, let's say, 8 weeks, I was on a ship ready to roll, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just in and out, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. During basic training, did they do anything special to kind of condition you for war? I mean, were they your instructors, were they kind of prepping you mentally on top of the physical demands to prep you for going to war?
Yeah, I think both. Being a 17-year-old kid, I was, really anxious to do whatever they asked, and so I was probably a pretty good student because I knew where I wanted to land and get over there, and so yeah, I enjoyed the Navy from the day I joined until the day I left the Navy. It was a great experience for me. I've always been very proud, very, very humble, but very, very well pleased with just being in the Navy. It was a great experience for me. I think it set my tone in my life for the rest of my life.
Good. So what was your MOS?
I'm sorry?
Your MOS? What was your job in the Navy?
Well, in the Navy, we were on a troop ship. There were 300 crew on the ship, and then we would pick up at whatever island or whatever. We'd have 1,800 Marines or 1,800 Army that would go in and make an invasion. And I was a coxswain on the Higbee boats to take them in ashore when we were making an invasion.
Okay. What from that point, where were you stationed? So you spent, so you went to spent 6 weeks in training, a couple more weeks, and you. What was your first station
I
after
wasn't
training?
any station. I mean, I was just layovers until we got on a ship.
Got on a ship,
Yeah,
and
so I
then
wasn't stationed any place until I got on a ship.
okay,
And then I was on the ship until I got injured, I guess maybe a year or less. Yeah,
what was the name of your ship?
that was the USS Leon.
USS Leon. So, where was the USS Leon? Where was it? Were you in the? You were in the Pacific, right?
South
Am I understanding?
Pacific, yes.
South Pacific. Okay. What's? I guess the conflicts that you were seeing. What battles were you involved in, or what conflicts were you involved in?
Well, remember I'm 90, so I don't remember some of these things.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think Fran can tell us the name of the islands that I hit and that sort of thing.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
but all I remember was there was 7 invasions that I, was involved
7
in.
invasions
Yes.
altogether.
We hit the island with Marines or Army and so forth.
Okay. Okay. So, walk me through a little bit, if you don't mind, just your impressions once you first got on your ship. What did you think?
Well, I think as a 17-year-old kid, I thought I was on a cruise someplace because I got on a ship, and the first time Japanese planes flew over and were strafing the deck, I said to everybody, I said, "Good God, get down! I think they're trying to hit us." And the someone said, "Well, Donovan, what the hell do you think we're doing in the South Pacific?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I didn't think I bargained for this. I thought it sounded fun to be on a ship and cruise around the world, But then when I hit the second invasion was the toughest of all. The second invasion was in Luzon, and I took 32 Marines ashore. And those Marines went in, and in hitting the beach, there were other, of course, cruises and other, up and down the beach, but they hit the beach. And unfortunately, I had 32 that were on, by the time I was able to back down, back to the ship to get another 32 Marines, 100% of them were wiped away. Had machine guns, were just killed them instantly. So I went back to the ship and got another 32, and then went back to that same spot that I was at, and those 32 Marines went ashore, and they just were wiped away again. Now, as a 17-year-old kid, I don't know, I just became immobilized. I said, "Oh my God." So I went back to the ship, went up to asked if I could go up to the captain up at his quarters, and I did. And I said, "Sir, I'm not going to take another crew in." I said, "I've had 64 men that have been wiped away in minutes." And I said, he said, "Well, you're going to be court-martialed. Get on down there and get your craft back and get back." And I said, "I can't do that." I said, "We've got something wrong here." I said, "All the bombardment that has been going on this morning prior to us landing," I said, "we've got a mountain," and I said, "that mountain is like this." And I said, "Up here, the mountain is blown away because of the tops and that sort of thing and everything, anything just debris. Now down here, there are Japanese soldiers that are encased in cement, and when we hit there, they have small opening, and they just fire, and anyone that hits that beach at that particular point, they're going to be gone." So with that, they threw me in the brig, and I spent the night in the brig, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'll get a dishonorable discharge." And I certainly didn't sleep any of that night, I'm sure, but I was really, really worried. And the next morning, I was taken up to the captain's quarters, and he said, "Donovan, you could have been right, so get back to work." And that was the end of it. So they and then what they did after I said that, then they brought in flamethrowers and just wiped away all the Japanese that were installed in there. They brought in, they had enough room there to bring in flamethrowers, and I saw them doing that from the ship. I could see what they were doing and so forth, but they just, you know, burnt all those men that were in there, burned them alive.
Wow. That's incredible. How how much did you feel like your life was at jeopardy each time you had to bring the Marines in?
Well, you were getting hit on both sides of your craft and so forth, and some of the craft did, of course, get hit, and the Marines or the Army never made it to shore. See, so, and I've always been concerned to make that statement about Marines, because when I hit the island with the Army, the Army always dug in. I mean, they hit the beach and just they're immediately on their belly. They're immediately, you know, looking around, observing, and so forth. Well, the Marines went charging in like this, and I thought, oh my God, you know. But when they're like this, they've just been cut in half, and somebody just unbelievable. And I think for a 17-year-old kid, it was just mind-boggling for me to, what am I doing here? You know, I knew it was in war at that moment. There's no doubt about it.
Sure, sure. How did you find courage in moments of impending life-threatening situations?
Prayer. I mean, you get called to GQ every single morning. Of course, the Japanese planes were over us, and so you were just praying that you got another day to live, and so forth. And then, now that I look back of it, though, you chip paint and painted, and you did things on the ship or whatever needed to be done for 8 hours, and you stood watch for 8 hours. Now, see, at that particular time, the war, they were just so short on manpower. And so we worked 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. But I think that was good because, and of course, you got these bunks that you crawl in the bunk, and you can't turn over. You just lay here and look at the guy that's up above you, and so forth. So all you did was, when you climbed in there, you were so darn tired, you just collapsed and slept a little bit, and you know. So yeah, I did that for all those times, as I say, until I was injured. You know. Yeah. So, but it was a neat life. I learned so much from watching other people and observing other people, and so I just felt it was good for me to be experiencing what I did experience. You know.
That's good. That's good. So you keep talking about how you got injured. Talk to me about that story.
Well, when they interviewed me for the World War II Museum, I told them I know very little about it.
Okay.
Meaning, they tell me I was blown up against the deck, the bulkhead, and out into the water, and I came to on the Arthur, the other ship. I came to on the other ship in sick bay. And but I don't know any real details about it.
Okay.
I really don't.
Okay. That's fine. So you're in World War II at this time. You're 17. You know, you said your older brother is also
in Guadalcanal in the Army.
In the Army, okay.
Mm-hmm.
How are you staying in touch with your family? Were you able to contact or stay in touch with your brother at all, or family back home?
No, not really. I could send letters back home, and then we'd go into a port, and maybe I'd say something like every 3 or 4 or 5 months, we'd get a letter from, maybe 2 or 3 letters from home, or five that all come in at the same time, though. Yeah. They had mail rooms set up on some islands, and we would lay off that island, and they'd send us somebody ashore and get what mail we could, you know.
Sure. Yeah. How was that feeling to read some letters from family?
Well, it made you feel so, so good that they're okay, and you're there, but you're wondering what has happened. Have the Japanese or the Germans attacked America, and what's happening, and so forth. You didn't get any very, very, very little news as to what was happening in the world as far as I was concerned. So, and I would write probably, let's say 2 or 3 letters a month. But I was really so busy, boy, you just didn't have the time to. And then what do you say? You can't say anything. You can't tell where you're at. You can't say what you're doing. So "Hi, Mom, I'm doing great," and goodbye.
Yeah. Wow. So, on your ship, did did you meet? Did you make friends with other sailors, or even some of the Army men or Marines that were on the ship there?
Not so much the Marines or the Army were only on there for a 2 weeks or less period. And as we would pick them up and just take them straight to the word of invasion that we were going to make and so forth. And they were in different sections of the world, and so we would go there and pick them up and head right back to where where we're going to rendezvous. You see, so but there's that. Unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, that I've tried so hard to reach some of the 300 men that were on our ship. Doty is my buddy that lives in California, but he has Alzheimer's. To my knowledge, he's the only one of us left. Him and I are the only two left, because I've tried through letters and so, but I have not been able to find any one of them.
Really? Yeah. Sorry. So what did you guys do to kind of pass some time? Was there any moments of lull that you guys were able to find some time to kind of relax?
No, once in a while they would simply, who knows where we're at, we would just, everybody go over shore. When I say go, just go over the board and swim around the ocean, and they'd have boats spread around like this in case any sharks were around, and they would once in a while have to shoot at a shark and so forth. But that was the only really relaxing. In other words, I basically didn't get off the ship for, I guess, close to the first year I was in the Navy. I don't think it was off the ship because supplies would be brought into us, or and if we docked, no one went ashore because we were heading right back out.
Yeah. What about the food? How was the food on the ship?
Well, the food was pretty good. Really, I think you have your usual, what I never had much soup, and then they had soup every single day for lunch, and I got to like soup, and so I enjoyed that. And the food was, everything's frozen. What I mean, if it isn't frozen, it's dehydrated, so it's not the best tasting, but it was there. And now when I got to cook on the other ship, which I'll get to in a minute, that I was trying to figure out, what do you do with doctor up eggs? What can you do? I'd put tomatoes, or I was always trying to come up with something different.
All right. So how long were you on your first ship?
I'd say 8 or 9 months.
8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what ship did you transfer?
That's when I transferred over to the Leon.
The Leon.
No, honey, which was I on first?
I don't know.
Pardon?
I don't know. Which island?
Pardon?
Which ship?
Which ship?
I'm not sure which one was first. I can go look it up.
See, that's my problem. No use in kidding you.
It's fun. It's fun.
See, I'm happy she doesn't have to. For 3 years, she's had to help me in and out of the shower and so forth. And I was walking. Now I can walk, and I don't have to take the elevators and do those sort of things. So,
sure.
So if this is clicking that much.
Well, so you mentioned you went from being the landcraft driver to now you're a cook.
Well, when I was in the sick bay there,
Mm-hmm.
and I might say this, that I'm in sick bay, and I'm laying there, and I'm laying there, and I'm laying there, and so forth, and the doctor comes in and says, "Now, Donovan, look, we're going to get you back to the States just as soon as we can. So you just got to, we'll get you. We promise you, we'll get you back soon." I'm laying there, and I'm laying there, and finally, doctor came in one morning and talked to me, and then a younger doctor came in, and the younger doctor examined me and so forth, and then he left, and this older doctor that was there was standing outside of the door, and there was about 10 or 12 of us guys in sick bay. So he's outside the door, and he said, you've got to go in and tell this young man that he's 17 and he's never going to walk again. So I'm thinking they're talking about somebody else. I didn't know it was me. So then the senior doctor came in and said, Donovan, I have to tell you, he said, your back is so seriously injured, we don't feel you'll ever walk again. I need to tell you that you need to know that now. He said, you keep clamoring to come back to the States, but he said, so I said, oh, Jesus. So I looked at him and I said, well, you don't know Harry Donovan. So 3 months later, give or take, I said, let me out of here. Let me do something. They said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I said, I remember when my mom was not feeling good or was ill when I was a kid, I said, I'd go into the kitchen and I'd cook eggs for the kids and my brothers and so forth, So I said, let me go into the galley. Well, okay, if you want to do it, just go down there. Well, I got down to the galley and I would scoot on my butt down the decks, and get down there. And heck, I got to liking it. And so they put me on 11 to 7 8 in the morning shift. So I'd cook breakfast for everybody. Well, I mean, there were more than myself, but we'd cook breakfast for the guys, and that's why I was always trying a little different, what I could do with eggs or what I could do with trying to spice it up a little bit. So that's when then they made me in a little bit of time they made me a ship's cook. I said, well, okay, I never thought I'd be a cook in the Navy, but that's how I happened to become a ship's cook. Well, and then the war was now over, because I was in maybe 6 or 8 hours after we signed the armistice. I was in Tokyo and got to, they told us, okay, you can go ashore, but now be sure, go ashore, but don't get in any quarrels, don't just say hello to everybody, don't try to have any conversations and so forth. And remember, they're humiliated now, what we've done to them. So we went ashore and I had a dinner, and that was probably the first time I'd been in a restaurant or something like that. And I have no idea what I ate, but I thought, God, I didn't like it. At any rate, we went back ashore. And then I was at Nagasaki. That's something that I'll always remember. Nagasaki, when we were there, you looked and there was nothing any taller than this 3-foot table here. Nothing was that just completely demolished. And some of those things really do make an impression on you. I guess that you never forget. You never quite leave your memory.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. So you mentioned this is after the war that you, I guess, went on into Tokyo. It was.
We were in Tokyo, yeah.
Yeah, Tokyo. So, what age were you at this point?
I'm 18 at that point.
18.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what were the general feelings? I guess across at least your experience within the military once the war was over. Was there a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride once it was all over with?
I think that's an interesting question to the degree that I never felt that we as Americans were ever bragging or, we just were so glad that it was over, that we were so glad that, and the captain said to us, I go ashore and just treat people the way they should be treated and be fair and so forth. And, so thank goodness I had experienced no problems like that in that little session I was ashore. But I was anxious to hear him, and I hit Hong Kong and a few other places then. And I think one of the things that I still remember now, we took on, after the war was over, we took on, I don't know, 1,000 maybe, of Chinese that we transported them from one area back to their home country, by Hong Kong perhaps. But at any rate, my God, I'm in the big galley and they're in there, and of course they're doing some cooking, and I'm looking in their rice that they had brought aboard, and there's just hundreds or dozens of bugs walking around, crawling around, so forth, and I'm thinking, oh my God, no, that's our, I don't know what they call their supplement. That was their, their nourishment was those bugs that were going, So you remember some of those things that, oh my God, that, so And then one of the guys, he shows me his watch, and he wants to trade it for a pack of cigarettes, and I couldn't wait. I didn't smoke, but we could get cigarettes for a nickel a pack. See, so I gave him a pack of cigarettes, and I'm going around. Look here, I got this watch. Well, it never did run, but I.
That's funny. So the war's over. How much longer did you stay in the Navy once the war was over?
Whenever the war was over in the summer of '45, I guess, and then I came out in May of '46.
46.
So
Okay.
we were doing a lot of transporting of just moving around at that particular moment, and we had an island, and they wanted to move some Marines or move some Army, and so we would take them where they could get a flight maybe back home, and men were getting discharged at that particular point. So we were really after the war we were maneuvering around to just whatever so.
Okay. There. Before we move on much past the war, I know there's a famous picture of you and General MacArthur.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me a little bit about the background of that picture?
Well, when we hit the island of Manila, we're there, and someone came aboard our ship, and then the guys were talking about, oh my God, Harry, General MacArthur's on our ship. And I said, who in the hell's General MacArthur? It didn't mean anything to me at that moment, of course. And they said, well, he's the guy that's going to, he's the big man from the Philippines. So all of a sudden, I'm selected to take him ashore. So our craft is, there's 3 men on the craft. So he came out, and I'm looking, he's a pretty tall guy. Look at him and so forth, and I think there were 6 different sessions where he walked ashore. I mean, I was in 2 of those because I remember that I saw pictures where one time I had my 45 on my hip, and there was another picture where I didn't have on a 45. But, as I say, I was so, it didn't mean that much to me, and yet I look back down and go, oh my God. Well, all those years went by, and I was at a VFW meeting one night, and there was a man that was born and raised in the Philippines, and he came to America and got his degree and became a doctor. And he said, I grew up in the Philippines in World War II. I was 10 or 11 years of age and so forth, And he said, in fact, I'll pass around some pictures here. He said, the picture of MacArthur, because I remember seeing him come ashore. Well, I looked at the picture, and now this is 30 years after I've been in the Navy. I said, oh my God. I said, there I am. And the guy said, you're in that picture? I said, well, yeah, there I am. At any rate. He said, well, Harry, that's been in Life magazine, Look magazine, and you name, I don't know how many magazines, and you. I said, no, I didn't know it was in there. So that's how you can see how interested I was. But I wasn't impressed, I guess. I don't know. But one of the problems that we had, he did not want to walk ashore in the water. He wanted a raft, a deck built out from our ship. He wanted to be able to walk right onto the land. And he says, I'm not going to. So that took us some time to and finally they ruled, nope, we're going to let you walk in the water like everyone else. You're not going to have a gangplank there. And that took some hours to get that back, and who's going to make the decision, see? So he walked, and then every time he went ashore, he came back to the ship and got a new outfit, and his outfits were just custom made, A, but B, whoever ironed them, man, would have taken hours. I mean, they were just, the crease was just perfect. And so he said, well, that's going to get, my crease is going to do not. So, well, so he put on a new uniform and he'd walk back again,
Wow. Oh, that sounds pretty cool. Okay, so back to after the war, you get out. You said somewhere around the summer or late spring.
46, yeah.
46.
Mhm.
So what do you do then?
Well, my dad worked at Goodrich, and so when I was 16 years of age, I was working in the payroll department at Goodrich. And I'm happy to tell you this, that I went to work back at the payroll department there and so forth, and I'm working, and one day the supervisor there called me into his office and he said, Harry, we got a problem. You can't come in at 7 o'clock in the morning and stay till 5. We work 8 to 4 here. And he said, some of the employees are not very happy that you're making them look bad, but you're working. I said, well, I'm just trying to do a good job and be a good employee. So he said, well, I got to tell you, Harry, he said, you can't do this anymore. You've got to work 8 to 4 is the way we all work. I'm on the streetcar going home then, and I thought, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. So with that, I didn't go back to work. Then I went to Akron U, and they give me some testing, and I said, I'm going to go back to school. So at that point, I didn't have a high school education, So I took the GED, I guess you take it, and I took that, and then I started and went to Akron U. Said, well, with your background, there's a university in Akron that is not Akron U, but it's a good business university. And I was married, incidentally, and had maybe one son by that time. And said, what you ought to do is go to this business university, go there 2 years and get a degree, and then after you get that, then come back here and become a CPA. I said, great. So that's how I graduated from that, and then, now all the time I'm going to school, though, I wash cars to go through Akron U, to go through that school and Akron U. So there was a big garage there in Akron. I got a job, and that's I don't know if you want to hear that, but we got $1 an hour for working in those days, and it sounded fantastic to me to work in the afternoon, and 8 hours at night, and so at any rate. But I come up with an idea. There was a couple of us that are parking cars, and then the customer would come back, and we'd go get his car and bring it up to the front there. So I said, hey, you carry the front and look after it as best you can. And so we got a deck back there where they wash cars all day. And I said, I'll wash cars at nighttime. And you can't believe this. Person would drive in, and I'd not park the car, but I would take it straight back to the car wash. I would wash their car and shine it for them in that respect. Then do that again and again. Then the people would go to a movie, or they'd have dinner downtown and so forth. And then they'd come back and want their car. And then, hey, I didn't order my car washed. I said, sir, I know you didn't order it washed, but I'm going to Akron U, and it's better than sitting around doing nothing. So I'm happy. I don't own a car, but I'd sure love to make sure your car looked nice and so forth. You can't believe the dollars and the $5 bills that they handed to me, and that's how I really got through school with my education and supporting my family. So it worked perfect,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So how long did it take you to get your CPA?
Well, I went to Akron U for night school, 7 years.
Wow, and this was while you're
All the
a
time.
family man.
Yeah, well,
working,
yeah,
wow.
But in the meantime, by then I'm transferred. After I graduated from Hemel, the business university, that's when I got a job with a CPA. I went to work for a CPA, and I worked for him for a few years. And unfortunately, Internal Revenue came to me and he said, Harry, we've worked cases with you, and we're happy with working cases with you, but we're going to shut this office down. The man that you work for, we don't treasure him at all, and we feel that we wanted to warn you that he's not going to be in business one of these days, and you ought to go out. So that's when I left there, opened my own practice, and I'm just so pleased to say that when I opened my doors, all the clients that I had worked with all came with me, and Internal Revenue was really wanting to put him out of business or in prison, something. That what he did was file fraudulent tax returns, is what they were saying and accusing him of. And so which was not my department. Mine was just bookkeeping and that sort of thing. I don't, but the clients just, well, I was in business, I would think, a year, and the practice had just swelled like this. And by the time I was in practice 2 years, I couldn't take on any more clients. I just had so many clients that came to me, and I was always so proud of that I was able to pick up clients like that.
That's great.
You know.
That's great. And how long did you do your own private practice there?
Up until I got to, well, let's go back. So let's say I was 27 or 8, had my own practice starting then, and until I was 40 years of age. And when I was 40 is when I started working for the Deltona Corporation, and they are the ones that developed Marco Island. So I flew down and looked at the projects and what they were showing, and I thought, oh my God, and the first time I saw Marco Island, I just fell in love with it. The beaches and everything, and I had never seen anything quite like this nice and so forth. So I don't know, I went into them and I said, I really like what I see, and so I bought a couple of lots, like $3,000 a lot, and you only had to pay 10% down, and they give you 10 years to pay for their 6 years, something like that, to pay the balance off and so forth. So I thought this island's going to grow. I feel good. Well, on Thanksgiving Day, Bob Mackel, Frank, and Elliot, the three Part brothers that owned the company, they were sitting with President Nixon, and they were at Key Biscayne. They were there, and he said that he was looking for somebody for a particular job. And so they recommended me for this, because I had done a lot of work for them and consulting and so forth. So they said, this would be, so hate to tell you if that's what you're saying. I had so many interviews, and from Washington and CIA and a FBI, and I thought, well, what? And they would tell you nothing, but you're being considered for this position. Well, I found out that the position finally, and in fact, that's a good point. I didn't find out hardly until we're in tax season. It's like April 1st or something like this, and no, March 1st, or maybe. At any rate, I've got to look at April 15th, the tax season, and so forth. April 1st is here, and so forth. So he said, May 1st now, you got to be in Washington. And that's when they then told me that what my position would be, advising, and I would never forget it because I thought it was just really well put together. President Nixon said, I'm looking for a particular person that would go to Boston, go to Detroit, go to Chicago, go to LA. I don't want you to be in an office. I want you to be able to move around and tell me everything is looking good in Detroit. They've got union problems. Well, what do you think about the union problems? Is that a good or what does this affect the overall economy for America? How are they doing in Cleveland? How are they doing in Pittsburgh with the steel plants working, yes, not working, and that sort of thing, So it was a real huge responsibility. I thought that, well, I arrive in Washington and have 1,700 employees in 6 offices. Well, I'm trying to get some things going in Washington, and I am there for less than 3 months, something like 3 months. And my congressman came to me, and Bill Ayers, he said, from this district, and he said, Harry, everybody's talking about you. You want to change Washington. Now, I've been here for a number of years, and I can't change Washington, and you aren't going to change Washington. So he says, you're a young man, and I'm going to tell you right now, what's going to happen is so simple. One night, you're going to be here at 8 o'clock at night working in whatever you're trying to put together and so forth. And he said, look, we're going to take you out on a stretcher. It'll either be because you've had a mental breakdown or you've had a heart attack. You can't go on, and you can't change Washington, and you can't go on the way you're going on. Well, with this, I took a 2-week vacation, and we went to Marco Island. Naturally, because I've been there. We stayed there for 2 weeks, and it's a Sunday afternoon, and I'm getting ready to go back to work Monday morning, or get to the airport and get. And my wife said, if you want to go back to Washington, you go as a divorced man because I'm not going to go back to that compound. And my salary, incidentally, I think was $35,000 a year plus not necessarily a chauffeur, but I could command a car whenever I wanted to do something, and so forth. And then the apartment, I think that was the deal. Well, I spent then 3 years on Marco Island and fished and walked and exercised and just did. But I looked after my wife because she needed somebody to just stay with her all the time. So I've never been sorry that I made the decision to retire at 41, but I did, and it was good for me, I think, to pull my life together and spend the time with her that she needed me so badly and so forth. So that's basically what I did, and then, it was just driving me crazy with being bored there. So you'll see on the tape that I made for the museum, and I'm not sure what to say about this, but what happened was I had sold all my business interests that I had before I went to Washington. So fortunately or unfortunately, at that time, I had $750,000 in a savings account. So I'm riding my bicycle, and I knew that since I'd been a part of Deltona, that anything that I wanted to buy a lot or something on Marco, they'd let me have 5% discount. So I went in the office and looked around some maps and so forth, and so I said, I want to buy that and that and that, and so we'd add up until I got up to the 750. I think I owned 37 home residential lots and a couple business lots and a couple on the beach and a complex for a shopping center, see. And that came to this, so I get home and my wife said, where you been? I said, well, I went and bought some land today. She said, oh, this island's really going to grow. I think that's wonderful. Well, then that evening for dinner, she said, well, you didn't tell me what all you bought. And I told her, she said, oh my God. She said, how much money did we spend? I said, $750,000. She says, but Harry, you're retired. We don't have any money coming in. What are we going to do? I said, oh, crap, I don't think I thought much about that. I said, I liked everything I saw, so I just bought it, Well, for that $750,000, over the years I sold it for something in excess of $10 million. Everything just went that crazy down in Marco Island. I mean, a nice lot that I bought for like $3,000 went for 30 and 50 and 80 and 100 and 200. And, I mean, it just kept going up in price. And the commercial. And then one of the beautiful things I did was buy a 7-acre parcel, and owned it. I think I paid $170,000 for it. I'm on the beach one day. It's a Sunday morning, and a bunch of guys were tossing a football back and forth. And this guy came over to me and said, I enjoyed having you bunch of guys down here playing ball with me this morning. I said, oh, okay. And he said, what is your name? I said, I'm Harry Donovan. He said, oh my God. He said, I've been searching for you. He said, you got a piece of ground I want to buy. I said, I do? I said, yeah. He said, my name's Joe Gargiola. And that I don't know if you know who that was or not, but he was on the Today Show for years. And, at any rate, I recognized him then when he said that. Oh my God. So at any rate, he says, you meet me at 10 o'clock in the morning and I'll write you a check for that piece of property for $1 million. And I just owned it not too long, see. So I went to the office the next morning and there was the check for $1 million, and then so all of a sudden I've got a piece of ground that I paid 170 for $1 million, And so yeah, but one of the emphasis that I want to make here, as far as I'm concerned, God has always had control of my life. Anything good that has happened to me has always been God, and anything bad, I just brought it on myself. So
it's usually how it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. That is incredible. So what? So you've been retired since 41. You said.
Well, I retired for 3 years.
3 years. Okay.
And then I went, and I decided though that, and that's a good point. I decided, if I could wash cars to go to Akron and ride a bicycle, I didn't have a car, I rode a bicycle to Akron and so forth. If I could do that and retire at 41 years of age, wouldn't it be wonderful to go back into the business world, but not be a CPA, but be a consultant? So basically I then opened up a small office with a couple of girls, with a secretary and then maybe another, and did a little bookkeeping and that sort of thing. But I basically did consulting. So I would go into a company and take a look at the volume, take a look at their employee relations and so forth. And I said, you could increase your volume here. You could increase the profits here. There's so many things you could do. You have a nice little business here, and so I had, I think, 40 some companies that I was an advisor to the board of directors of these companies, and but beyond me and my unbelievable, one of the biggest and best was ever Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. Um, I'll quickly tell you that little story. Bank One had loaned $1 million to this particular company, and they, in those days, they said to me, "Hey Harry, would you take a look at this company? The man owes us $1 million now, and is struggling, but he says he has to have new equipment, and he can't go on because he has to spend all this money, another $1 million or $1.5 million on new equipment." So I went and took a look at. I interviewed the sales manager. I interviewed and I worked with him, and for X number of months, you see. And finally, I called him and said, "Oh, I'm ready with my report." I go into the bank, and I don't know if I tell you, 25 years of age, 26, I don't know. God, I get there, and there must be 20 people sitting at this big long table. Bankers, lawyers, and whoever, I don't know who the heck they all are. So they said, "Well, Mr. Donovan, what do you think about this?" I said, "Well, I think what you should do is put the company up for sale, take your loss, and walk away." I said, "It's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. Number one, don't loan him another dollar, and so forth." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I interviewed and spent a lot of time with this man, and he's a real gentleman. He's the nicest guy you'd ever meet. But I tell you this, he could never be president and run a company and be successful, because even he's a nice guy, and everybody, all the employees liked him, and he was just a principled guy, really. But I said, unfortunately, I got to tell you, he's got an alcohol problem that he'll have all of his life." And I said, "Now, I just feel that, and I hate to tell you this." So this man gets up down at this end, he walks all the way around the table, comes around, he said, "Any man walks into a meeting and tells me my own brother has got an alcohol problem," he said, "I knew he had a little bit of a problem, but I didn't know it was this serious." He said, "I want to tell you one thing, you go to work for me." And it was one of the Firestone family. That's how I became associated with Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. So
That's
I
incredible.
had a position with Firestone for a lot of years, and I don't know if I should admit this. Every April and every October, I got a check for $37,500. So I got $75,000 a year, and I did once in a while a bit, but I don't. You couldn't say it by the hour. It was anything like that. But and I never did know for sure why I got the 75,000, but I did. But if they had a little problem in, I don't know, in North Carolina, or they were going to take a plant in North Carolina, "Harry, what do you think about this? What do you?" And the board would say, "What do you think about this?" And the union's asking for $3 an hour, and we can't pay him but 30 cents, or I mean, we're that far apart. "Harry, what are you going to do here? And what do you think?" And so just little negotiations like that. That's so for a lot of years. If I tell you 30, I don't know, but a lot of years. That was my, and for me to get a $75,000 client, that was pretty darn neat. And then I, of course, was when the Firestone family are all gone by this time, and I could see Firestone just going downhill, though. Really, they were. Family's gone, and they had a man that I didn't like as president anyway. And so, at any rate, there was a company here in Akron that was a pretty good sales organization. And so I get a phone call from Paris, and they said, "We've heard about you, Mr. Donovan, and we have something like for you to do. Would you find us a couple of good people or a good company in Akron, because you got General, and you got Goodyear, and you got Firestone, you got all these, you got all these companies, and we'd like to." The name of the company was Axo Chemical. So we'd like to sell our chemicals in the United States, and we thought maybe we would just go ahead and get us a little office set up right there. So you hire some people, get some people, and it'll be on a commission basis. Well, I set this team up, and they did really good. Everything's going along fine, and so then what happened was the about, let's say, 2 years, second year maybe, we get a email or whatever, in those days a telegram maybe, but anyway, it said, we're not going to ship you any more materials because you've sold some things to Goodyear and you've sold some things to Firestone and you've done a good job on that, but they owe us money and they don't pay us, so we're not going to pay you your commission to do this, and we're not going to ship you any goods no matter what they order. We're not going to ship anything else. So they call me in and say, well, what are we going to do now? We can't sell anything we have, and that's the only thing we can sell. It's the only products we can sell. So I thought, oh Jesus, well, I don't know what to do. So we have a couple of meetings and we talk a little bit, and I get a phone call. Catherine phoned me, and I talked to her on the phone, and she was, I don't know what position she owned it or owned it at. So she called me and she said, Harry, she said, I'm going to talk to you, but when I hang up, you never, ever, ever talk to me about this phone call. Do we understand each other? And I didn't understand. I said, well, I guess, you know. So she said, well, I'll tell you what, the president of the company will be in the United States, he'll be in America, and he'll be up in New York City, and this is the hotel he's going to stay at. So she said, why don't you, I just want to tip you off and let you goodbye. So I thought, well, she didn't really say go there, but she, you know, so I thought, oh, well, so I get on a plane and I go to New York City. I walk into the hotel he's at and announce myself. And so the president of this company comes down in the elevator and he said, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'm Harry Donovan. He said, I'm part of the recognition that we're selling products for you in America. And he said, oh, okay. What do you want with me? And I said, why would you come to me? I said, well, you understand, I said, I think you're the only one who can solve this problem. And I explained to him what had happened. He said, we did $13 billion in volume last year. I don't know what's going on in accounts receivable, and I don't know. He said, what do you want me to do? So I said, well, sir, somebody's got to do something. We're going to shut down, and you won't be selling anything in America if we don't handle this problem. With this, he ordered some coffee, and he said, well, come on up to the room. So I get up to his room in the elevator, get up to his room, and we start talking. This is 10:30 in the morning. So he said, well, I'll give you 10 minutes to tell me what you think I could or should do. And so, you know, at 12:30, maybe it's 1 o'clock, he said, oh my God, he said, come on, let's go downstairs and have lunch. Now, this is Glenn Nichols, who's the president of this $13 billion company, you know, and I never dreamed of this. We get downstairs and we have lunch and we talk and so forth. But when we sat down, they brought our food and I simply bowed my head and said a little prayer. That's all. I didn't think about it, didn't, you know, just always do. So all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock and we're still at the restaurant sitting there. He says, I said, oh my God, I got to get out to the airport. I got a flight to catch at whatever time. He said, well, I got a rental car, I'll take you. Get in his car and we go out to the airport and he drops me off. And that's goodbye. Enjoyed talking to you today. A couple months later, I'm on Marco Island and I get a phone call. He says, Harry, this is Glenn. When can you come to Paris? And I said, I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. I don't, you know. He said, this is Glenn Nichols. Holy Jesus, Glenn's calling me. I said, well, sir, you know. So I got back to Akron then, and I said, what am I going to do? I don't know, you know. I don't know what he wants. So he and I said, he says, I want to make some purchase here in America, and I want you to be the lead negotiator. And I said, well, okay, if that's what you want me to do. And so we met at the Fairlawn Country Club here. And he says, bring a broker that you can trust and work with. And he says, and I'll meet you there. So, you know, and I don't know what he wants me to do or what he, you know. So we're sitting there and we have lunch. And then he says, now, Harry, here's what I want to do. He said, I haven't been able to tell you what we wanted to do prior to this, but we want to buy controlling interest of Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. Now, we know your background. You're the man that could make this or break this for us. And you're sitting down. that's when I tell you this. So he hands me a check. He said, "You don't think I'm serious? I think I've talked to you a little bit." He said, "You've never really said much, but I just didn't feel you were serious when you talked to me about what I wanted to do." But he said, "We think $6 billion is about a fair price for it, but we're not. We want you to take a look at it and you tell us what you think. If you're able to put this deal together, we'll give you $1 million for just putting it together. Now, understand, if we don't put it together, you don't get a dime. Is that okay?" And I said, "Well, I guess. I mean, I never had a chance to have $1 million fee before." So we're sitting there, and he pulled out this check, and he says, "Now, I'm going to show you this check so you'll know now I'm sincere." He pulls out a check, and I look at these zeros on it, and I hand it over to the broker, and he hands it back to me, but it was $500 million. I got this check, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I still don't know, is it 50 million? Is it, I never saw $500 million check, and it did all those zeros, see? So with this, he went back to Paris, and I negotiated and worked with it, but I called him then, and we didn't talk about Firestone. We talked about, I think we called it rabbit or something like that. I said, "I don't think this is a rabbit you want to catch. I don't think this is a rabbit you want to buy," things like that. See, we talked that way when we're on the phone and so forth, never divulging that name. So he said, "Well, Harry, you understand our deal. You don't get a dime. You've spent 6 to 9 months on this, and you don't get a dime." I said, "Well, I've looked at the union problems. I've looked at the equipment. I've talked to many of the employees, and I said, here's what I'm concerned about. You should not buy this company. Yes, it would be wonderful for me to earn $1 million, but I can't have you buy this company so that I can earn $1 million, because it's just not worth it." I said, "There's so many problems and with old equipment and so forth. I'm advising you not to buy it." So he said, "Well, okay." And I said, "Well," then he came back to Akron, and we had another meeting and so forth, and he said, sitting there talking, and I said, "Tell me this, how in the world did you choose me to do this?" "Harry," he said, "I came to America going to try and find a broker that would help us do this Firestone deal. But," he said, "I'm sitting there at the table with you, and you said your prayer. And," he said, "just the way you handled yourself, I determined, hey, I've got my man right here. I don't need to look any further." So that's, they did not buy it, but then I'm proud of this though. And all the time my wife was living then, she likes to travel, and so I did too. So they wrote me a letter and said, "Harry, you've done us a great service, because it was sold to Bridgestone and Firestone, and they paid $6.2 billion, and they lost 400. Oh, I don't know how many. They lost 3 or 4 billion the first year they bought it. So, but they've turned it around today, and they've done a good job. But at any rate, this letter said, "Harry, you've done so much for us and kept us out of this, and we really thank you. We know that you and your wife enjoy traveling because you've been over in Paris, and she has been there and so forth. So, tell you what you do. We know how you feel about income taxes. So, how about this? You take a 3-week vacation to any place in the world that you want to go. Keep track of all your expenses of food and the hotels and so forth." And he says, "And then when you get back from the trip, you bill us for that, like you went there for us, and then we'll send you a check for that, a full amount. We'll reimburse you, and so therefore it won't be taxable to you." And I did that for many, many years. So my wife and I traveled all over the world, and
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm.
So, man, you've had such an amazing career, amazing experiences. I'd like to move on into some of the organizations that you're a part of. You've affected so many people. I know that I've heard some of the stories that you've been, at least some of the people you've affected. Can you talk about some of the organizations that you're involved in?
Well, one proud moment is, I would repeat this to the degree that I started out as a kid, 10% of my earnings went to church, and that went for a lot of years, and then I became somewhat successful, so that I increased it to maybe 25%. And today, I give 50% of my annual income to help veterans. I don't know how to answer this. That other tape that I did, I got carried away, I think. I didn't mean to, but I said my income is retired. Since I'm retired, and my income's about $400,000 a year. So I give $200,000 a year to help veterans in any way I can. But one of the things that I am involved in is what we call Open M, and that lady spoke at the party the other night, was the director of Open M. Open M was and still is after all these years, but I've been on the board there for over 40 years. But we had an old house, and we at home would cook food and take it to that, and then they would serve luncheon to the people that were coming in there. And I went to the board of directors and I said, this is terrible. I said, when it's cold, people are standing outside. We could seat about 30 people at these picnic tables we had in this old house. And I said, then we get rid of those 30 people and bring another 30, and then maybe I've seen it as high as 100 people standing outside. And it was really raw cold this one day, so I went. It's called a special board meeting. I said, I can't stand this anymore. We've got to do something. And they said, well, Donovan, you're crazy. We're in South Akron, and what are you talking about? So what I did then we got this little house here. So I went to the city, and I went through whatever records I could and hired an attorney. So we bought 14 lots that surrounded this one house. I was able to do that and got those and paid for them. And all of a sudden, I went back to the board and I said, okay, now we have the land. What we need to do now is build the building. Well, Donovan, this is crazy. What you want to do. And I said, well, we got to do it. And it probably took me 5 years to put those lots together and those 14, get them people had moved away and the house had burnt down and you name it. At any rate, we're going to design the building. I said, well, I want a gymnasium for kids to play after school, and then I want to be able to serve them food there. I want a nice kitchen where they can serve food there. And I said, then we also need a place for the little girls, the little boys that they have in this area, they don't have a place to study. I said, we ought to have a little place where they can learn computers and things like that. So we get the blueprint and we get it done. And we have this big special meeting, and we get the contractor said, well, this is a pretty good sized project. Now in those days, 40 or how many years ago, he said 3.6 million is what I anticipate would be your cost to build this. And the board immediately said, we tried to tell you, Donovan, we tried to tell you. I said, well, wait, I know that. So I said, let's begin trying to raise funds together. We got to raise funds some way. We can, Well, we started raising funds, and there's a lady in Akron by the name of Ann Brennan, and it's just a peach. And she heard about the project and came in, and her friends helped us go over the mark. So we raised the 3.6 million before we ever broke ground. Wow. Then, now we started breaking, well, I was doing this consulting and this work for different people. So I had one contractor, I said, why don't you set the steel fires? And they get one guy to set the block fires, one guy to put in the flooring, and I don't know what all. See, at any rate, we built that property then for 1.6 million, and we had $2 million left over in our escrow account. So that I've been proud of ever since, And that's today I'm, just that for my 90th birthday, the employees there put on a nice birthday party for me and so forth, But so it's just been a wonderful. That's one of my precious memories is working with Open M for 40 some years now, That's great. But the other thing I'm proud of is our Valor home here in Akron. I went to the city and said we need to do something for these veterans. I said they're out there in the woods and sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's summer, but I said these people are they need somebody to love them, somebody to reach out to them. So I said, here's what we need. So the federal government got involved, the city got involved, and we built the first Valor home in the United States, to my knowledge, and a home for homeless veterans. I repeat, it had 30 bedrooms and a nice big television room and a kitchen, that sort of thing, you know. So they worked on this and so forth. Well, then I give them $100,000, and that really it kind of got other people interested, including the federal government. So once they saw that we were gonna do it, and I don't know how I was gonna do it, but we were gonna build it. See, so now we have 5 Valor homes in this Lorain and Portage County and Akron. So I work with them quite a bit and go there, you know.
It's amazing. Any other veteran organizations you were part of?
Well, American Legion, VFW, Purple Heart. Is that it, honey? I guess that's it.
Check with the boss. That's incredible. Wow, that is amazing. Just kind of wrapping things up here.
Yes, sir.
Wanted to reflect back on just your overall service, your military service. How do you feel your time in the service has affected you, and I guess who you are as a person? How has it affected your life?
I think it made a man out of me at 17 years of age, and all of a sudden I'm over there and realizing that this is not a voyage for fun. This is a serious business. But yeah, working with other and some of the endurance that I went through and so forth, and battles and so forth, that I think it made a man out of me. So when I came home from the Navy, got married, 19 years of age and too young to get married, but I did. I'd gone to grade school and high school with this lady, so I married her and started a family, you know. So we're married a year and had the first child. So I think that what it did, though, also, the beauty of it, was I made decisions in the Navy with some, I guess I could go on and on, maybe some of the things that I did in the Navy of trying to make it easier for those guys around me. I tried to look at, is there an easier and a better way to scrub down the deck than what we're doing? I don't know for sure if that sounds sensible, but I said, you know, we're painting and we're chipping. That's all we're ever doing. We, you know, to keep the ship. I said, you know, I think we need different kind of paint. We need a better paint. We need, you know, and so forth. So and I guess that's always been my, maybe raising sweet corn as a kid. I sold 3 dozen for a quarter or whatever have you. But and the other thing that when I had employees, when I went to clients, I felt that what I learned in the Navy was it's teamwork. It's teamwork that can get the job done. And if you don't have that, buddy, you're really in trouble. And so I think the teamwork is probably the best thing that I learned in the Navy, so that when I went to a company and did consulting for them, I would sit with the employees and sit with the owner and say, you know, here's some issues that I think the employees have. Not only are they not getting enough money, and the employees generally aren't getting enough money, they feel over it, but how about some love? How about some attention? And I said, in a marriage, I tell her 10 times a day I love her. And I'm proud of that, you know, I mean, but it's the fun that you have. Take 100 employees, get rid of 30 of them, and give me those 70 employees, and I'll make more net profit than we made in the prior years with 100 employees. Why? We had 70 people on the team promoting and working together and so forth. And that's what I learned maybe in the Navy as to what could be done if you're on ACAX or you're on, you know, no matter what position you were in the Navy, if you had 3 of the guys, 5 of the guys, whatever you're doing, as a teamwork, we could get the job done. And I can't shoot down a plane, but hey, Harry, let's go 40 degrees here, go back in, I mean, and there's another guy that's standing right there next to me, and so through that we were able to shoot down a few planes, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your, based off of your experience and what you've witnessed, um, what are your feelings about military now?
I think that the military needs a little love and attention. I think that we're we've got a problem that if you take a kid 50 years ago and took him into the service, if you said do 100 push-ups, you did it. You didn't ask why only 99, or you know. You take a kid and goes in the service today and you tell him 100 push-ups, and he says, "I don't need this. I joined. I want to do this. I want to do that, and here's what I select, not what the Army or the Navy selects." So we've got that problem, and it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that somebody needs a little bit of attention, I think, to. A perfect example is, see, I'm drawing a pension when I come out of the Navy, and I go to annually to get I spent a couple of years in and out of hospitals and so forth, and I go up here to the clinic and for my annual, and then your pension, how you answer how that goes is what they determine what your pension is. And they had already paid for my education, and that's the greatest thing ever happened to me. I could have never gotten an education without the Navy and the Army and America. So at any rate, the doctor checks me all over, and how you doing? We talk and so forth, and I said, "Doc, I'm doing good." I said, "I'm washing cars now and going to school." I said, "You can just chalk me off." I said, "I'm drawing $69 a month." I think is what I was drawing. I said, "No, don't tell them, the government don't." He said, "I don't understand you. What are you saying?" I said, "Well, I'm saying that I'm on my own now, and I'm working, washing cars, and going to school." So I said, "I don't think the government should send me $69 anymore." And he set down his pen and looked at me, and he said, "This has never happened to me before." And I said, "Well, I don't know, what am I?" He said, "Do you understand that you're giving up your pension?" He said, "This could go on the rest of your life." I said, "Well, I don't feel the government owes me anything. They already paid for my education, and they've done this for all the time I've been home." So I said, "I'm happy." I said, "I don't think they need to pay me anymore." I think that's the way I feel about America. I didn't want to take anything it wasn't due me,
Yeah. What message would you leave for future generations that would be listening to this?
Love America, be American, and talk to God every day, because we can't solve the problems of alcohol and drugs that we have in the suicides that are going on and the different things like that. I wouldn't know how to operate every day without God. And "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And that's the way I talk to him. "Hey, buddy," and I go to bed at night and get on my knees and thank him for today and for Fran and for my family, for everything that I've enjoyed. Whoever dreamed of a kid growing sweet corn and all of a sudden retires at 40, is a millionaire or whatever. I don't know. I probably was a millionaire by the time I was multi-millionaire by the time I was 40 plus. And then the people that I met. I could tell you that there's a man that is now deceased that invented saran wrap. He invented, oh God, I don't know. Honey, what did Bert invent?
What?
Saran wrap. What did Bert invent? Saran and what else?
Band-Aids.
And Band-Aids. He went to Johnson & Johnson, and his daughter, 10 years old, stepped out of the shower, and she got a Band-Aid on that fell off. So he went to Johnson & Johnson and said to them, "It's a good idea, but you got to have a better adhesive than what you got there." So he created that for them. And he said, "I don't want money, I want stock in your company." When he died, he had $500 million in stock in that company.
Wow.
He was a billionaire, and him and I became good friends. And if he was going to buy a company, he would, I don't know where this is going to even just answer to you, but I mean, what his theory was that he'd have me take a look at a company and say, Harry, I'm thinking about buying this company. He bought 17 companies in the time I was with him and worked with him. And but he'd go in and buy a company for 20, 25 million or whatever he would do. And then, but I would take a look at it and so forth. And incidentally, I know he fired me 12 or 15 times in those years because if I disagreed with him, but he always, and then he'd hire me back. So at any rate, I learned so much from him. I learned, and then there's another man that became my best friend in the world was Anthony Alex. Alex invented the thermostat that you and I have in our car today. That you're in a desert and there it is the temperature, and you're in Alaska and you got the temperatures. So that thermostat he shipped them out by the millions every single day. So he had a case with Internal Revenue, and that he had charged too much off to. He liked to drink, and so he charged too much off to expense accounts. So Internal Revenue said, well, they did the audit. And they said, well, you owe $25,000. Well, a client of mine was playing golf with him, and he's telling me that he owes, now $25,000 to him that's no big deal. Okay, and his accountant said, for God's sakes, give him the $25,000 and shut him up. So he said, well, you ought to call Harry. So this man called me, and I went straight to the golf course where he was at that night. And he said, and he hands me this sheet of paper and says, what he owes, $25,000. And he said, would you take a look at this? And I said, yes. So I went to appellate tax court, and by the time it's already an appellate level, see. And so I go to appellate tax court up in Cleveland, and maybe I should tell you that's my psychology. When I was going to Internal Revenue and I had a case, I tried to schedule a meeting for 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. We would get there, and I would talk to him about his family. I would talk to him about how he's doing, how does he think about Internal Revenue, how does he feel about the federal government, so forth. And the first thing you know, if he's a Democrat, I'm a Democrat. If he's a Republican, I'm a Republican. Okay. And the first thing you know, it's time for lunch. And I'd say, hey, can I take you to lunch? Oh, no, Harry, you can't buy lunch, but I'll go to lunch with you. So we go to lunch and talk, so forth. When I get back to his office, that's 1:30 or whatever, we get back to his office, I said, hey, man, $25,000 that's a cup of coffee to the Internal Revenue. I said, what can you do with this? He said, oh, hell, Harry, let's settle. How about 12.5? We'll settle it. I said, okay, you got a deal. So I go back to the client and I said, we owe 12.5. And so he says, okay, you're hired. And okay. He said, I want you to look, So we went to lunch. I give him my fee, and he paid me, and we were sitting there at lunch, and he said, I want to do this every Tuesday. And I said, well, sir, I've got a family to feed and an office to run. I just can't leave here and go. I said, I go over to next door is a Wendy's, and I go over there and get me a hamburger and eat that at my desk and keep on, I never, Well, I said, wait a minute. He said, how much would you earn if you didn't go out to lunch? I said, well, maybe about $100. I don't know what I would earn. He said, okay, just bill me for what you would have made if you say, for 24 years, him and I had lunch every single Tuesday. Now, the beauty of this also is he liked Chicago and he liked Boston. He liked to go up to Boston and have salmon, or go up there. There's some restaurants in San Francisco we'd fly to Boston and have lunch and fly back. We'd fly to Chicago and have lunch. Now, if we went to California, we'd stay a couple of days, I mean, of course, he could do this, but he became, well, as I said, then his wife passed away suddenly, and I was such a good partner of his that I basically became really encased with the company, that ran the company, and I did a lot of things at the company and so forth. So when he died, I inherited 80% of the company, and the employees they inherited 92% of the company. So I was executive of his estate, but I dearly missed him because we had so much fun together traveling, and just so I've met people like that. Now, I'm not sure I'm going where you want me to go, but I'm.
You're fine. So last question for you is there anything that you feel we haven't talked about that you would like to share?
Honey, you can think of anything? I don't. I could keep you here all day, I think. Yeah, but
I could keep listening to you all day. You got some pretty incredible
but I don't
stories.
know if, it's just that I'm always cautious, if that's a word, or, a friend would quickly tell you I talk too darn much. But I think I'm trying to say that at 90 years of age, how can I convince people that you cannot give God? And when you write a check and give, you have so much fun. Don't wait until you die and then your kids get the money. I've had unbelievable, unfortunate circumstances with people that pass away and their kids get the money and blow it and so forth. See, no matter what age you have and no matter what you have, I saw clients that sold their business and got 10 million or got X number of $1 million, and that's the good news. The bad news is between alcohol and divorce and cars and boats and so forth, they blew it. You know what I mean? So I guess I could have a nicer apartment than this, but I'm 100% happy right here. This is all. What else? I'm so thankful that everything that I have and the friends that I have, and you were able to see some of those friends that night at the, what a life, what a wonderful life I've lived. It's all I can tell you. It's that I have no regrets about anything in the world, and if I say this wrong, you correct it or cut it out. But perfect example is that when I was 65 years of age, Cleveland Clinic said, "Harry, your heart's so bad. We feel you ought to get your house in order. We don't think you'll be here for Christmas," and this is in April. I mean, something. I thought, oh boy, and I got Mabel, and I got the problem of her health and so forth. So I did not tell any of my family one iota of this. Waited until Christmas, and I invited all the family to come down for spend Christmas with us. So they're on Marco Island, and finished dinner. I cooked dinner and finished dinner, and so I said, I have something to tell you. I said, I've had bad news from Cleveland Clinic. They didn't think I would be here for Christmas, but I want to tell you what I did. I said, and the 3 children are there. I said, the 3 children that are sitting here, and Mabel is sitting here, but I said, so I'm putting $3 million into escrow. That $3 million will support her for the rest of her life, I think, the earnings of it. However, what will happen then when she passes away, you kids will inherit whatever is left. Harry said to me, "My God, Dad, I think it's the most beautiful thing I ever heard." Debbie said, "Dad, what would I do with $1 million?" I said, "Now, honey, you don't get $1 million. It's going to be an escrow for you to so much you're going to get an allocation every month for what you need." My son Alan, though, who's the oldest, said, "Well, I can't believe this. You didn't consult anybody and ask me what I wanted." I said, "Well, I gave away my entire estate down to $3 million. And at the time, as I say, I was 65 years of age. I am proud, if that's the way of saying it, and I don't know if I should say it, but take then, I'm 65, today I'm 90. My income is more than, not my income, but my net worth is more than that $3 million today. And I give away, as I told you, half of my income every year. Now, if you can figure that out other than thanking God, I haven't figured out a way to do it.
That's amazing. Well, it has been my honor and my privilege to meet you and sit down and interview with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your story and thank you for your service.
I don't know how I did for you, but
Amazing. Amazing.